Hi, everybody. This is your old crow. No, this is your Sensei Al Bob, and I'm at a bowling alley. It's a place that has Wi-Fi and French fries, and I had to have my eyes operated on today. And so my neighbor was good enough to drive me the 60 miles, but he's working on being a professional bowler. So first he has to have lots of games at these kind of bowling alley situations. And then once a month he goes and plays the big time. And so anyway, here I am, um, and in America, and I wear my USA hat, 47, fit right in, and I got my racing car jacket on, and um, I just wanted to tell you about stories, and what is a story? A story is something that
I'm gonna put it right here. Right here.
that's my favorite bag.
Okay.
Yes, yep, my favorite bag. And those bags,
There's gonna be a bunch of them.
right, exactly. And you can use them for anything. Right.
I'm excited.
Yep. So here are all these guys. They're all playing. They're all bowling, and and I'm talking about stories. What are stories, right? Stories are about things that we did, things that our forefathers did, right? And can you guys hear me? Can you hear my voice over the bowling alley? Give me some feedback, gang. There's three of you there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Does my voice come over? It looks like my voice comes over pretty good. But anyway, here I am, and I'm at the Rhonda. Yes, you can hear me. Okay. So what's a story, right? Story is something that tells about deeds, about things we did, right? Story tells us about things that our forefathers did, right? And one of the problems that's going on in our culture is that everything is a faux. Donald Trump is right when he says fake news. I mean, it's all fake, right? Because none of us are really telling us our story. And one of the stories is these guys, bowling, you know, you know, that's like real fellowship, right? And every time I show you pictures, these are things I did, right? Now, John showed you some images of my grandfather, and he read to the audience a story from my grandfather, about his hardships, right? And and what's really sad is that John actually has a great backstory where he came from, right? He came from, Irish and Italian, right? Which is a very American thing. And his father was born in Ireland. His father was more or less a bastard, meaning when I lived in Ireland, before Ireland joined the EU, it was a really proud and glorious country with a great history. But England had oppressed it for like 1,000 years. And even in the 60s and 70s, they were oppressed by England, even though they were, had their revolution in 27. They didn't get all of Ireland. Northern Ireland was an open sore, right? And the Catholic Church was the other oppressor, right? And the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire, which was the Pope, and then England was birthed from that. They're all the same empire. They're the Reich, and the Third Reich. First was the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and then the Third Reich. And so up until things, became less Catholic, there was no divorce. So women did not marry guys. They screwed around. The Catholic Church said nothing about not screwing around. And so they had lots of kids. Catholic Church, have as many kids as you can, but by different men. So basically, most of the population of Ireland was bastards. So because they were bastards, and this was ordained by England, so those people couldn't own property. They were so taxed that they couldn't even have windows, because if you had a window, you got taxed for a window, right? So that's where John's father came from. John's father was born, right, and his mother had a bunch of kids, and those kids were like not going to see anything. So she was able to virtually sell her son to a Catholic Irish family in New York City who were well-to-do, and that guy was a policeman, and he was high up in the New York City Police Department. And he later became the chief of police in New York City. I actually knew John Birmingham's father's father, John's grandfather, right? And so I basically knew John's grandfather better than John did, because John only knew him when he was old and dottery and sat in the corner. I knew him when he was having the police department, go shoot people and crack heads and illegally wiretap. And so that's John Birmingham's grandfather, chief of police of New York City. Birmingham. Go look that one up. Chief Birmingham in New York, right? And he retired in the early 60s, middle 60s, maybe even 70s, right? And his father came from that. So his father came from this super poverty, came to America when he was 4 or so, lived as that guy's son, and were very authoritarian, and so went to Vietnam, because that's what he did, and he got serious PTSD and had issues from what he saw in Vietnam. But he came back, GI Bill, went to school, became a teacher, got the heck out of New York and away from his dad, went to Virginia, taught in the schools, and he met, when he was at school, an Italian, a Sicilian, and Sicily is this little island down at the bottom, the boot of the shoe of Italy, the heel, and the Sicilians were where the mob came from, but the worst, because they again were treated the worst by the whole culture of the Romans, right? And so when her family came to America, Italians were treated worse than if you were black and Mexican today. So John has an amazing backstory, which he never talks about. Never, ever, ever. The closest he came to talking about it was when he played that record. Now he's got a lot. He doesn't have to go through my stuff to steal, a story. He's got plenty of stories, but he can't tell his own story. Now, John is an example of what's going on in the whole world, that we are being deculturized, destroyed. Yep, Saxons, Germany, yep. And Woodrow Wilson, basically you can trace America's, racist, sexist, xenophobic, selfish culture all the way from our founding fathers. Because, the people before, the fathers of the founding fathers stole everything from the Indians. The only good Indian was a dead Indian, Even though those guys went out, and fought in the Indian Wars, the French and English Indian Wars, and got close with the Indians. And that's why our Constitution is based on the, Iroquois Great Law, So,
That's what I'm talking about.
Anyway,
Whenever you look at
so the bottom line is we have to start in every day and every way, taking the piece of earth and making it stronger by telling our own story. Now, my whole life, I have rewritten my story day and day and day and day out, you know. So I have a bunch of photos here. So here is this was a festival that turned into Floyd Fest, right? And a bunch of folks went up there on top of the mountains in between Asheville and Virginia, and had these great, you know, we just this wasn't quite a rainbow gathering, but I kind of took the rainbow sensibility and put, you know, old time music and rock and roll on top of a mountain where I could find electricity, and we did this, right? And everyone brought their own passion, and this came out of this really wild and interesting group of artists that were in Asheville in the 90s, right? And today, the hipster world of Asheville is the you know bastardized version of this. You know, not to say that those kids aren't doing their own thing; they are. This is, you know, when the show started. Now this is out in the middle of the woods. You know. So this was Asheville before the hipsters moved in. This is part of North Asheville, right up before the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I used to live up there in a chicken farm. That stopped being a chicken farm in the 40s or 50s. And all those chicken coops were little artists lived in them. And that was the first place I lived in Asheville, this chicken coop farm that had about 40 artists in them. And this was there was a little lake off the corner of North Asheville, and we were on the other side of it, right? Just about this time. Now, all of this has been bulldozed over and turned into a shopping center, housing, golf course. You know, all of this is turned into this. And now, back in the day in Asheville, when you could rent a loft, I rented this loft that had been the Masonic Lodge, and we would have these performance art potluck dinners on Friday. Buddy of mine. And there was a co-op art facility that was an old funked out factory building right near the railroads. We turned it into one of the first galleries, and John Cram was part of this. This is back in the day when he was into crafts. Here's my eyeball. Here we are, you know, doing yoga before we started to dance. Here we are dancing, and we would do freeform dance, right? There's me, starting to get big. I not gotten totally big. And this is what I'm asking you guys to do. I'm asking you guys to, in your own little neighborhoods, start doing things that you know, like these guys are bowling. They're passionate about this, right? This is the kind of passion you need, you know? Well, you know, basically that's why I'm not living there. It's not that I have, John will always be my friend. I care about him, but there's not much I can do. I spent 3 years trying to be a good example, trying to be there, try to help him, try to, help his diet, help him, not do the things that twist him up. And, so now John's up there all by himself, right? And if you look at the videos he makes of his floor, that is, remember, when I do guided meditations and have you put your hands on the page of your Akashic Red and to, eliminate, to let go, to vomit up all of your negative emotions. That's what John did on that floor. So in that loft I had downtown Asheville, it was a gigantic space. There were lots of little rooms, but it was a gigantic space that we would do dance and all kinds of performance art. That became, we had our galleries, right? Where we showed our art, and our crafts, that was this place. And that was by the railroad. And now that whole area is the big hipster gallery area, right? And like I said, this beautiful place that was a chicken farm that had that nice lake is now a golf course, shopping mall, apartments that are $1 million a piece, And we were living in chicken coops, And, this is what Asheville used to look like. And now it's wall to wall, cars, it costs 25 cents a minute to park downtown Asheville. Back in the day when I lived down there, you could basically, camp out on the main street. There was nobody there. So let's see what you guys are saying here. Let's see. Yep, so bloody cool. So I had to wear I used to be a newspaper photographer, and I got one of these when I used to shoot races in the South. And I've had this frigging thing forever. I never really wear it, but and then I got really fat. I had a picture of myself when I wasn't really my biggest, but I was getting there. And back to I always was a builder. Here's a house I built in North Carolina. In a place called Waynesville.
I swear to you, the day after my wedding, we went back to the they had peanut butter
and I built this house, and basically I got it out of a kit, right? Got the drawing out of a kit. And because it was, already notarized by the American Whoop-de-Doo Architects Association, I didn't have to pay some architect, $40,000. I went to the building inspector who I knew. I said, "Here, can we build this?" And he said, "Sure." See, so this is the living room, large atrium ceiling, and so I like in the kit, it didn't show this, but I did it because it lent itself to that. And we had 5 bedrooms, big bedrooms, each have their own bath. And this was the view of that property. And I built that house in it was built on the side of a hill, so the foundation was the most difficult thing. And, you can kind of get an idea that it was like way up there. And drainage, because it was a rainforest, Really had to make sure the drainage, because if you didn't do the drainage right, it would have washed the whole house down the hill, right? So here is, I built also a shopping center. Here is the shopping center. Well, there's the entrance. And I did this because I ran across, some people said, wow, they saw something I was building, and they said, can you build something for us? And I said, sure. And I started drawing pictures, and then I went to Lowe's and got this book of, books of drawings, and they picked the one they liked. I bought it for like $62 because it was stamped by, Anyway, so here's the shopping center I built. And here's the electric service we put in, right? 2,800 amps, brought in a transformer. Here we are pulling, and that's something I kind of built from a trailer hitch to pull the big 500 MCM wire. Here's a switching here off the transformers. Here's all the panels I wired. Here's the buses. And I did this all by myself and two kids who I got out of I was working at a teenage, a prison for teenagers. And they were these, I got a bunch of kids. I told my boss, listen, these guys have done nothing wrong. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And why don't I teach them a skill? They'll sleep here, but I'll take them out to work, right? And so I had them do all of this, right? Because I was, still, being a professor, even though I did all of this electric work and building work and all of this stuff. So at the height of this, I had about 16 of these, guys who were basically convicts, but they were like 17, They shouldn't be in jail. And my boss was smart enough to let me do it. So I taught them all the trade, right? And I did all of this with them, and they basically did all this work, And after, and this is like perfect wiring. Most panels are like stuffed and terrible, and so the inspector came, and he was so impressed by these guys, he wrote a letter to the governor of North Carolina at that time, and the guy head of the penal institution about these guys who should be, let, be not have to carry, being a felon on their record. And all 16 of them were besmirched, right? Were let go. And I put them in, because I was working for large electrical guys running their jobs like this. And then I brought them guys who I said, I've trained these guys. They will do the right thing. So that was 16 guys right there. 16, 17-year-old kids that I took out of jail, taught them a trade. Now that's a story,
Yeah, 3-6.
It's more of us building stuff. The inside of the shopping center. Panels. We had about 40 panels. And so they had a lot of, trial and error. Here we are setting a pad for the transformers. Right? Here we are. So that's like 2-aught wire, and it's nice and neat and going straight in the panels the way they should. Okay, here's me. Here's me getting heavy. That's one of my sweeties. Now I chunked on another 100 pounds to that. This is me at about 285, and I stuck on another 100 pounds, so I was like 385. And then I got heavier. When I was working for the Desperate Lawyers, I stuck on another 60 pounds. So I was like going towards 500. Now I am like 225. You know. And I just went to my doctor's, and I just had my eyes operated on, and I went to so I'm rewiring myself. The medical scene here is not a tenth of what Carillion has in Virginia. But I've spent a lot of effort to find good guys to take care of me, and I found a bunch. So I do have guys. So now last month I had, and my cough is from the medicine. Not that I got a cold or I got the flu or I got pneumonia, but it's a side effect of the blood pressure medicine they put me on. And I said, I don't know about this stuff when they put me on it. And the summer was so dry that it didn't have the effect. But once it started raining, I got this. So they changed me on to the drug that I looked up on the internet. And I said, I think I need this one. And the guy said, no, this will work. Yeah, it worked, but it cost me to have this hat. So anyway, so let's see what you guys are saying. So I gave you a little, the backstory of John. So John's backstory is amazing. His parents are amazing. His grandparents are amazing. His great-grandparents are amazing. And John has to make up this really, bullshit kind of stuff to try and say that he is an artist. He doesn't have to make it up. He just has to do it. But he's scared to I don't know, I'm tired of trying to deal with whatever he is, right? So here I am at the bowling alley. And well, I built about 30 houses, about 40 commercial buildings, about 28 discotheques, about 12 nightclubs, about 20 really fancy restaurants, and a bunch of rich people's kind of loft apartments, So, I was a builder, and I built a lot of other stuff too. But I did it because to me, it was like art. I did it because I love doing it. And I love doing electric work and teaching it to other people to do it the way, like art. And so when inspectors would come in and see the work we did, they would like, and every city that I spent long enough time for the, inspector folk know that I was around and was working for X, Y, and Z people. Oh, Al's doing that. Oh, I don't have to inspect it. It's, and so, when I lived in Ithaca, I worked for 3 different contractors, it was that way. When I lived in Lynchburg and I worked for 2 different contractors, it was that way. New York City, that way. Asheville, that way. And so I'm here watching these guys play bowling, and they are really, they are that same way. They're passionate about what they're doing. They are all about bowling. Yeah. So what is the card thing? What's the cards about? What are the playing cards about? Oh. I'm not a bowler aficionado.
You gotta start getting going.
Gotcha. So these guys are actually playing poker while bowling. They're playing Texas Hold'em while they're bowling. And drinking a lot of beer. So, guys, am I still here? Am I here? Anyway, so that was the intro. Hi, this is your Sensei Al Bob, and I'm glad to be here. And I just want to say, don't believe anything I say. You know, I'm not really here at a bowling alley. You know, thing is, gang, we really have to start stepping up because I keep talking about this window. It was interesting. This morning I woke up and I was looking at the calendar, and this morning was like 15 months to the day that I started doing Dreamy Dreamland. And there's another,
You like it don't really matter.
15 months starting, this Friday, we're going to be at our 14th month counting down. You know, this was the second 15 months. You know, we went all the way from May all the way up to October, which is the second 15th month. September was the first 15 months, right? Now we're counting backwards, right? Counting down. So now we're at 14 months and counting, coming this Friday. And what's going to happen? We're going to have, so look what's going on in California. You know, virtually 90% of all utilities in the United States, thanks to Bill Clinton, meaning he was, had that, he got hired by the hidden hand. And they said, listen, Bill, we're going to make you president, but we're going to let your philandering be the thing that we talk about, right? And we're going to have this nice young thing, and you're going to have a fling with her, and you're going to spill your seed on a dress, and this real witch of a woman's going to put that dress in a property bag. That's what Linda, what's her name, did, and so, and then, Billy Boy lied, right? So he lied about screwing around. But, it came out like when, the Republican Congress, found Billy guilty, and sent it on to the Senate, and, all of the guys who ran the Republican Congress, the Speaker and all the other powerful guys were all screwing around with their own interns, right? And so when they were all talking about family values and being Christian and not, they were doing so when everyone's talking about Donnie Trump, everything he's done like out in the open. He's not hiding anything because all the other senators and congressmen and other presidents have done the same. I mean, George Bush, that guy, him and Dick Cheney started all these wars in the Middle East for no reason. There was no weapons of they lied. There were no weapons of mass destruction. And fake news, Dick Cheney would call the guys up in the New York Times and say, hey, we think they got weapons. And then so New York Times would say, oh, a hidden source says there's weapons of mass destruction. And then Dick Cheney would go, the New York Times said, and Halliburton was about to go under Once we went to war, Halliburton built all of the bases there. More guys died of electrocution than died of getting shot in Iraq. And Halliburton made $1 trillion. I mean, so Donald Trump ain't doing that. And then when and basically they put up Tweedledee, Al dumbass, to run against Georgie Boy. Neither of those guys had any gravitas to be. There's a great movie, I think it's called Vice. It's a story of Dick Cheney, and that's a good movie. Go watch that movie. Especially when he goes to bed with his wife and they do the scene from Richard II from Shakespeare. Ooh la la. And so Shakespeare said we're all actors on a stage, and it just gets played over and over and over again, right? So, what can I expect? French fries. Ooh, yes. Part of my dinner, French fries. So, guys, am I here? Can you hear me? Say something. I don't know if I hit the wrong button or what. Alan was the last person that says message. Retracted, unable to connect to chat. Please try again. So, anybody out there? Can you hear me? I mean, the clicker is going off. Yeah, say something. Come on. Well, I'm gonna end this right now unless someone says something. Right? Come on, let's hear something from you guys, and then I'm gonna come back. Okay? Hey, I don't hear anything from you. Okay, come on, say something. You guys there? Come on, say something. You got hung yet for that damn noose. Oh, yeah. Okay.